Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. In the game that we covered last on this channel, I only finished second, but despite that, I still have a great position in the standings, being 5 points ahead of Eske and even more points ahead of Majondor and GerisNezus, who of course have one less game finished. And the game that we are taking a look at today is the second one of the four-player games, and that of course is a great chance for me. If I should score another good result, I have a really good position, while for my opponents it's of course now a really good and maybe also one of the last chances to catch up to me and make things close again for the last three-player games and for the two-player game section. So I hope you're excited for the game to come, and without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing in the fourth position, which of course can always be a bit of a challenge in the four-player games. And before we start taking a look at the game, we will first take a look at the leaders and wonders. We have some theater leaders in age 3 with Chaplin, Marlene Dietrich. There's also the Hollywood. There's also Bach and Antoni Gaudi in the game, so setting up for an opera could certainly be a viable strategy. We also have Bill Gates and Sid Meier as some lab leaders. There's the spaceflight, no internet though, and no Einstein, Steve Jobs. We have Pierre, but no internet, and then also Mandela. There's Churchill, but no Gandhi, also no Manhattan Project, and no Red Cross. In H2 we have a bunch of strong wonders, but the Suez Canal is missing, as well as James Cook, so colonization maybe not having as big as a payoff as otherwise. But otherwise we have some strong wonders with Ocean Liner, even together with Maria. We have Railroad, but no James Watt. We have the Harvard College, and Statue of Liberty, so going for some iron setup could be strong in this game. We also have Darwin as a bit of a culture leader in H2. We have Newton, but no Nobel. And then Robespierre and Napoleon as military action leaders. Robespierre maybe also not a reason to go for an iron setup if possible. In H1 we have both of the military action leaders, Jan Žižka and Joan of Arc. We have Genghis Khan and Barbarossa to help with the strength. We have Barbarossa and Eleanor as good transitional leaders, Isabella as a solid leader but without colonization payoff, maybe rather weak. And then there's Leonardo but no Gutenberg. We have both of the Happy Face Lucian wonders, actually all of the Happy Face Lucian wonders, with St. Peter's Basilica, Forbidden City and Great Wall. We have also the Emichi Castle, so another way to get some strength. And then there's the Silk Road but no Universitas. Also no Machu Picchu. GerisNezus is in first position, just takes the engineering genius, skips Confucius, but I guess that could be a fine choice. Majondor then goes for Confucius, and the Stonehenge will have a lot of science to work with. And Eske will then go for the pyramids and the rich land, which I think is quite a strong first pick. Especially getting rich land together with the pyramids is always quite nice, because then only a resource development needs to be revealed and you can really quickly rush the pyramids. Now it's my turn, and it was clear for me that I want to take Boudica here. I think she's just the best leader that I can get and is quite strong in four-player games. And then the main question was, do I want to go for the Colossus, or do I want to leave myself open for other wonders, maybe then just take the cultural heritage? The wonders that could come out of the deck are the Colosseum and the Acropolis, so maybe not the greatest wonders, even though the Colosseum I think is quite fine in four-player games, and the Acropolis maybe not as much, but there are some wonders that could come out. And there's also again maybe the chance, we have seen it in some of the other games already, to maybe skip the HA wonder and hope towards getting something like Forbidden City. Silk Road as a first wonder, so that could also be an idea. And without some colonization payoff, I just don't like the Colossus as much. I could take the Colossus as a defensive option with playing in last position, but I kinda like it more to use the Colossus as an offensive option instead of using it defensively, even though that can also still be fine. And I could also just go for the Colossus, I think it's a solid wonder, but here I decided to leave myself open for either one of the other HA wonders, or maybe even to getting lucky and getting an early Silk Road or something. That means that the Colossus stays available for GerisNezus, which I think is nice for him, because he can now go for Clio, and while normally the Colossus and Clio are not the greatest synergy, GerisNezus has the engineering genius here, meaning he can now build a second lab, and at the next turn has enough resources to build the first step of the Colossus using Clio's resource while also building the third mine. So I could have taken it away, but this combination is still not that strong that I thought that I need to cut it. Majondor goes for Confucius, builds a mine, increases his population, takes the urban growth. Hammurabi will now fall down to 2 civil actions for Eske, so I thought that he will likely go for him, and that's indeed the case. He will go for Hammurabi, elects him, builds a mine, increases his population, has no pyramids and Hammurabi, so a very strong wonder, very strong leader. Maybe having both of them can sometimes be a bit of an overkill, but I think it can also just work out extremely well, especially if you maybe get an early monarchy revolution. Then you are basically settled for your government form for the rest of the game. Now it's my turn, I go for Boudica, I build my mine, increase my population, so nothing unusual. And then I again have to make a choice. The Colosseum didn't come out of the deck, but there is the Acropolis available now. But I could also just play the Cultural Heritage or take the Urban Growth and still leave myself open for an H1 wonder. There isn't one on the row yet, though. And with playing in last position, with at least one of the players, with Majondor having Confucius pushing a lot, there might be a lot of developments revealed, and then if I don't have a way to spend my resources, things could be a bit awkward. And there's the Forbidden City in the game. If you remember my Leaders in Wonders synergy video, I mentioned this Acropolis Forbidden City combination and that I actually like it quite a bit, and maybe it's the best in 2-player games, but I think also in 4-player games it can be quite solid, and with that I decided to just go for the Acropolis here, and at least it gives me also one additional strength with playing in last position. Maybe that could also help, but it will give me some other benefits and also a bit of culture income, so that's... And defensively, maybe I liked it even a bit more than the Colossus, but of course it depends on the situation. I draw the vast territory in the Phalanx tactic. GerisNezus increases his population, builds a step of the Colossus, builds a mine, increases his population again, just plays it very civil action efficiently and is able to get his economy going while also starting to use Clio. Majondor seeds and opens the development of crafts. Takes the irrigation, develops it, actually goes for some early food income, is willing to skip the second lab for now, but can stay with the free population and not go into consumption. Now it's Eske's turn. I was interested to see whether I get either Barbarossa and or the Knights, because I have a tactic and I think Barbarossa is just quite a strong leader. Actually, at the moment, if I would do a tier list again for the H1 Leaders and Wonders, I think Barbarossa would at the moment again be the highest on my list. And Eske doesn't take him, and lets him be available for me actually together with the Knights. A bit greedy, maybe with playing already Pyramids and Hammurabi. The Code of Laws is not that important, maybe it would be more important to secure a copy of Knights, but there are still more copies of military text to come. Maybe he has already something like the Legion, and then of course it's perfectly fine to skip the Knights here. Now it's my turn, and I decided to just pick those things up, but that means that I need to spend a lot of civil actions to just take some stuff, meaning I could get disrupted if I seed now and something is revealed. Also, the vast territory is of course quite a bit of a commitment, so maybe I didn't want to push it anyway. On the other hand, I have now Barbarossa, and with Barbarossa, the vast territory can just be insanely strong, and I have a tactic. If I maybe just send a tactic away, I could have good chances to win this colony, and so I was definitely considering seeding that, but maybe just not quite yet, as for the moment I could get disrupted by some additional resources being revealed. At the next turn, I have enough resources to finish the Acropolis then, and and I just have Barbarossa, meaning as soon as I need to build some military, I can do it very efficiently with just going for this Phalanx tactic with some Barbarossa activations. I draw some cards, another territory and a scientific breakthrough. GerisNezus finishes the Colossus and just goes for the next one, the Dimitri Castle. Could also go for the Great Wall. I think in 4-player games the Great Wall is just very, very strong. But maybe he has a Knight's tactic already, and then maybe the Dimitri Castle is the better choice. Majondor Seeds, the second event, is also from him. The development of trade routes are revealed, so there is now some additional stuff revealed. And Majondor increases his population twice, builds the second lab now, and builds also a step of the Stonehenge to get out of corruption. Just plays his civil action efficiently, and with having a 4-step wonder, I think that's probably a good choice. Eske finishes the pyramids this turn, takes the iron for 3 and also the rich land. As I said, with all of those strong H2 wonders, having an iron setup could be quite strong, and so he's willing to take it for 3, can go for 2 upgrades at the next turn, and that should be quite strong. Now it is my turn, and this turn I had to make an interesting decision, because I was already at the turn before, because I go for Barbarossa here, eyeing the Great Wall that is coming down the road, and I actually can potentially finish the Acropolis and take the Great Wall, but finishing the Acropolis is not enough to get me out of corruption, and so that would just be a bit awkward. And first I thought, well, I can't go for the Great Wall then. But I can do something else. I can finish the Acropolis, increase my population once, and then either play the cultural heritage or maybe grab a rich land, and that would still be an extremely fine turn. And I could then hope to go for something different than the Great Wall. But then again, I thought, man, I really would kind of like to have that Great Wall, and there is maybe a chance that I can take it a bit more efficiently, because what I could do, and what I actually considered also to do, is to finish the Acropolis, take the Great Wall, elect Barbarossa, activate, do an activation, and then disband the warrior immediately, getting me out of corruption, but it just felt a bit inefficient, and I felt maybe that's just it's a bit too expensive, but I was still considering it. But then I thought maybe if there's something revealed like development of settlement or development of civil life, ideally, then I out of the sudden either could, for example, do a Barbarossa activation without me having an uprising, so I would not need to disband a warrior, and also if with development of civil life I would actually spend one food, which is just the amount that I need to get out of corruption. So there's a small chance that maybe I could get some help. If there's some additional resource revealed, I can still go for a relatively normal turn. There are actually also two events that would be annoying, and that's the development of warfare and religion. Especially the development of religion with having the Acropolis would be quite bad to miss out on. So it was a tough choice, but I just feel Barbarossa plus Great Wall could have quite some big effect, and with that I decided to push. The question is now, what do I want to push? The scientific breakthrough is a bit tricky because at the moment I don't really have a plan to go for any science upgrade, or I don't know whether I will have the chance to do this, and then it might just give a bigger boost to one of my opponents. I could just go for the developed territory. It's a fine colony. I will have Barbarossa, maybe have a chance to win it, but the developed territory is not the kind of colony that I necessarily want to put a whole phalanx tactic on, and I have only 2 military actions at the moment, no defense cards in hand, so I felt like chances are that maybe rather one of my opponents will win it, especially with GerisNezus having the additional colonization force. And at the end I decided to do the commitment and actually put the vast territory into the deck. That has just some extreme upside potential for me, because if I win it with Barbarossa, that's just insanely strong. And I am also willing to send a lot of units, 3, maybe even 4 units into this colony with having Barbarossa, so I will be hopefully able to bid a lot for this. Could be a bit annoying if it's revealed at an awkward timing, for example if there's a chance that some of my opponents could punish me with an aggression, but I was willing at the end to do the gamble, as I think the potential upside that for me is just the biggest, and maybe I also have decent chances to win it, and I decided to push. And I was extremely happy to see that there is actually the development of civil life revealed. I don't get punished by development of religion, I actually get rewarded by, maybe in this situation, the perfect development for me, allowing me to increase my population by spending a food, finishing the Acropolis, and then going for the Great Wall, not even needing to elect Barbarossa right now to get out of corruption, and instead being able to keep Boudica for a bit longer, and then having this Great Wall Barbarossa combination. Of course I will go for a Knight's tactic, but I have already 2 warriors if I have 1 tactic, and with Barbarossa I might be able to go for even 3 or maybe 4 warriors, and then very cheaply go for a big amount of strength. The happy phase will allow me to maybe put even more workers into the units, and then I felt like I'm very nicely prepared for the military. It's of course quite expensive, but there are still some developments to come that could give me resources. I could maybe get help by some yellow cards, and with that I was willing to undergo this project here. I revealed a tactic already here, so that at the next turn I again of course need to get out of corruption at the next turn, and ideally I don't want to spend any more food without using it for some Barbarossa activation, so I thought that at the next turn I will then likely switch to Barbarossa, and revealing the tactic now makes it possible that I can already fulfill a tactic, which could be important because with Majondor having Confucius and maybe also the others pushing, the event deck might already be flipped or almost flipped before my next turn, and if I am able to fulfill this tactic, first of all I have chances to maybe be the strongest, and second of all I have this tactic already completed so that I can send it away if the vast territory should be revealed, and so I felt like it's important to reveal this tactic here already. I draw the rebellion. GerisNezus seats, and the development of religion is revealed, so here I got quite a bit lucky. If the order would be the other way around, it would be a lot worse for me. So yeah, definitely quite fortunate for me here. GerisNezus is actually willing to take the Code of Laws for 3 civil actions, so that's quite expensive. He then builds a Step of the Magic Castle and a warrior to get out of corruption. Maybe could have also thought about going for Alchemy, maybe even Alchemy Leonardo. But of course having another civil action is not bad, and the first copy of Code of Laws is already gone. Majondor has tons of science, so he might not have a chance to get that at the next turn. He also reveals the fighting band tactic is now at 5 strength. Majondor seeds and opens the development of markets. I can definitely use some additional resources for my Great Wall. Majondor goes for the iron, goes for an upgrade, and also builds a warrior to get out of corruption and to maybe get a bit stronger. Now it's Eske's turn. He seeds as well, so the event deck is indeed already flipped. I get some draws from the development of politics, and I get 2 defense cards and another colony, so that could be very interesting. And then Eske at his turn will take the free religion, increases population, goes for the knights, goes for Leonardo interestingly, but there's an alchemy in the row, so he soon will be able to go for a lot of science income, builds a knight, builds a warrior. With that he is prepared to at the next turn copy my phalanx tactic, and with that there's a clear plan on how to increase his strength, and then he takes the alchemy so that he at the next turn can just go for some economical upgrades while still being able to increase his strength by just copying the tactic. Now it's my turn, I'm the weakest, I'm not prepared to win the vast territory, so I definitely don't push here. And then, as said, I think this turn it's the time to go for Barbarossa. I can get another 2 resources out of Boudica, which again is extremely helpful for me to have as many resources available as possible to finish the Great Wall. I can then develop the Knights, go for 1 activation, go for another activation, which is still not enough to get me out of corruption, so I then also need to build at least 1 step of the Great Wall. And there is even a way how to finish the Great Wall, and that I could do if I take the reserves. I could then play the reserves at the next turn and finish the Great Wall. And then there's also a breakthrough available for 1 civil action, which is an extremely valuable card for me to take. There's also a copy of Irrigation, but I felt like those yellow cards might be more important here, and I also felt like that if I hopefully should be able to win the vast territory, and maybe the chance that I will be able to do this is a bit increased now that I have those defense cards in hand, I maybe don't really need the irrigation. So I'd rather consider those yellow cards, and it would be kind of nice to finish the Great Wall at the next turn. The thing is, there are 2 copies of Monarchy coming down the row, and if one of those should be available for me the next turn, I definitely would like to get into them. Those are extremely cheap, and getting the 3rd military action is extremely important for Barbarossa. The thing is, if I now take both reserves and a breakthrough, then I don't have enough civil actions to play the reserves, finish the Great Wall, and go for the monarchies, so I could also decide to skip the breakthrough here instead of building a step of the Great Wall. But I think it's not really necessary to already finish the Great Wall at the next turn. First of all, the vast territory might be revealed and I have other things to do anyway. And second of all, instead of finishing the Great Wall, which at the moment would give me 2 strength, I could also at the next turn just go for yet another Barbarossa activation, which basically gives me 2 strength as well. And with that, I at the end was willing to pick up both of those yellow cards. If it is my plan to not finish the Great Wall at the next turn, you could of course also argue that I maybe can just skip the reserves. It's not the most efficient card, but I still felt like I maybe need as many resources as in support to build a Great Wall, plus maybe even some more units, plus maybe being able to rebuild to the vast territory. That even though it's not the most efficient way to get some resources, I still felt like it's a very valuable card for me. At the end of my turn, I have to decide what I keep in hand, and of course with the colony coming, I kind of would like to keep both defense cards here, but I decided that it's better to actually also keep 1 event so that I can push at the next turn, because first of all, if I actually should open the colony during my turn, I get win the colonization tiebreaker, and it's also just a perfect time for me to win the colony so that I can then immediately rebuild units with Barbarossa. And also, I might just be the strongest at the beginning of my next turn, so I might just get rewarded by a lot of events, and it would be awkward if I'm not able to push. Of course, it hurts discarding a defense card, but at the end I was willing to keep the Rebellion, which should be fine for me with getting the Great Wall, and also has maybe the potential to do some damage to my opponents. GerisNezus offers a naval trade agreement. I was happy that it gets rejected. Majondor refuses to have the additional colonization force, which increases maybe my chance to win the vast territory, but of course Majondor didn't have knowledge about that colony being in there. GerisNezus finishes the Meiji Castle and actually continues just going for even more wonders, goes for the Silk Road now, and an irrigation. Skips the alchemy, interestingly. Could have been also an interesting choice to, instead of going for the Silk Road, going for the alchemy, but you know I'm a big Silk Road fan, and I actually support this choice. I'm not saying it's definitely correct, but I think it's definitely also not bad, and maybe it's fine to skip the alchemy here. But maybe it could also be fine to go for both alchemy and Silk Road. But I mean, I have the Great Wall, I have Barbarossa. Maybe it could be important to have a bit of food income soon. Majondor offers an open borders agreement to Eske. Of course, never great to not be part of that pact. But with Barbarossa, the chances definitely also decrease that you are part of that pact. Majondor goes for the first copy of Monarchy. I was hoping that the second one will make it to me so that I get the third military action going. And then Majondor goes for one more warrior, yet another warrior. And interestingly, he didn't push at the beginning of his turn, but of course he had a good alternative in offering this pact. So it doesn't. Otherwise, he probably would have pushed, because the thing is, he gets now a bit stronger, maybe can avoid being weakest, but Eske has a very easy way to go up to 7 strength by just copying the phalanx tactic. He will this turn go for the alchemy, takes the swordsman for 2, and the masonry. I was very happy to see that he doesn't go for the monarchy. Maybe this pact has actually something good to it for me as well, because maybe if Eske would have been stuck on 2 military actions, the chances maybe would have increased that he maybe instead of the masonry would have taken the monarchy. But here I can now get the monarchy, which I think is an extremely useful card for me here. Eske goes up to 7 strength, but it means that I'm actually still the strongest. I kept the event in hand, and now I decided to push, and was of course very interested to see what will come out of the deck. And it's a Reign of Terror, so one of my opponents gets hit by something, that's not bad, and Majondor actually has to destroy something. At my turn, I think it's completely clear that I want to go for the monarchy here. It's very cheap. I need the third military action. Can develop it. I think it's also completely clear that I want to take this engineering genius. That's so much more efficient than the reserves, and I can still use it in the Great Wall very nicely. So I think that's just also a very strong card to take. And then I decided to just actually go for a warrior, but if I finish the Great Wall soon, that also gives me 2 strength and it's just a bit cheaper, so it felt like the better choice for me. But it doesn't get me out of corruption yet, but I don't want to spend 2 more civil actions and taking some stuff here anyway, so building 1 step of the Great Wall I felt is a good move anyway. And then at the next turn I can, with the engineering genius, very cheaply finish the Great Wall, so even if I win the vast territory, I should be able to rebuild some units and also finish the Great Wall. Which is nice. And then with my last civil action, all of those cards not the greatest for me. Of course, another copy of reserves might be helpful, but it also would start to be a bit inefficient, and I also felt like I might still very much need the Science of the Cultural Heritage at some point, so I decided to play that card here now. I draw some more events, so I might again at the next turn be able to push. GerisNezus builds a step of the Silk Road, goes for the swordsman, is able to increase his population, builds a swordsman, upgrades the warrior to swordsman, is now actually the strongest, then takes the reserves that he can play with the Silk Road bonus. Majondor seeds with Confucius, and he gets again punished for being the weakest, so that's a bit unfortunate for him, especially also the order of those events, because he first has to destroy something with the Reign of Terror, and then another thing with the border conflict. If it would have been the other way around, he first could have destroyed something with the border conflict and then just lost the free population. But now that order is not ideal for him, also not ideal for me. If it would have been the other way around, I would have gotten the 3 additional resources out of the border conflict, and I will soon again be the strongest when I finish the Great Wall. So also a bit unfortunate, but that of course can happen. Majondor finishes the Stonehenge this turn, and at the moment doesn't have access to any military tech, and there's only 1 copy of Knights left, which is maybe not the easiest transition anyway, so he decides here to go for Genghis Khan, builds another warrior, plays the medieval army tactic, so maybe just to be safe. I was still happy to see that, because at the moment he's not generating any culture with him, and while he is then maybe a decent safety option, and maybe necessary in the situation, it's really not the greatest value that he gets out of his leader, at least at the moment, with not generating any culture with him. He then goes for the bread and circuses and the patriotism. Now it's Eske's turn. He actually seeds. The vast territory is not revealed yet, instead a knowledge of the ancients, giving me yet another additional resource, but GerisNezus, with having gone for all of those wonders, gets the most out of it. Eske this turn goes for some iron upgrades, takes the breakthrough. Is not taking any of those warfares, which maybe could still be useful for defense at some point. Now it's my turn. I'm not the strongest, but now would be a great time to see the vast territory revealed, and I'm also at least one of the 2 strongest, so I decided to push the call to arms into the deck. And the vast territory is actually revealed. That's a very good timing for me. I was very happy. And also I went all in. I was willing to send all 4 units away, plus my colonization card. I actually would be able to then still end my turn at a very fine amount of strength. But GerisNezus lets me pay quite a bit. He maybe went for an army, maybe as a card, has the colonization bonus. The other ones didn't bid as much. But GerisNezus lets me pay, but at least I don't have to send all 4 units, but instead only 3, which makes a difference, because I can actually soon be quite a bit threatening. So I sent my whole army away and a colonization card, which I think is still, with having Barbarossa, an extremely cheap price for that colony. And then I, this turn, can first of all rebuild my army, going up to 8 strength. I can then finish the Great Wall. I can even go for another activation of Barbarossa to go for another warrior, putting me already at 12 strength. Now I have used up all of my military actions. I thought about if I maybe just want to go for the iron here, maybe then start a bit of production, maybe I could then go for one of those wonders at some point. It could be decent. But here I saw a way to go all in on the military, kind of, or to go all in on a bit of military pressure. And I also felt like that is extremely strong for me. And what I did here was to actually go for the warfare, play the reserves for food, and with just 1 resource I can actually go for a 4th Barbarossa activation this turn. I generated an insane amount of value with him this turn, saving 4 civil actions, 4 food and 4 resources. Which maybe just shows how insane Barbarossa can be. Saladin gives you 1 civil action a turn, Leonardo 1 resource, 1 science a turn maybe. Barbarossa this turn gave me 4 civil actions, 4 resources, 4 food, and I can actually use it in a useful manner thanks to having the Great Wall. I'm now at 15 strength, which already makes me a bit threatening, but of course I don't have any card to punish my opponents yet. But at the next turn, I can, with having 2 food saved up, go for 1 more knight, go actually up to 20 strength, and thanks to having the warfare now in addition to the monarchy, I can still draw 3 cards. So I have 1 full draw to maybe get 1 aggression, 1 war, and if I should draw one of those things, I could think my position could get really strong here. And even if not, I still apply some pressure, I force maybe some awkward responses out of my opponents, and can maybe still hope to somehow stabilize, or maybe then a turn later get some draws, and maybe my opponents still haven't found a way to catch up to my very big amount of strength. So that was quite an quite an insane turn. Sending 3 units away, being quite weak then, but then I think going up from 2 strength with the Acropolis to 15 strength in 1 turn during H1, so that's actually quite a big turn here. Now it's GerisNezus' turn. The one downside of my turn maybe, but I think I just couldn't play around it, is that sadly the age didn't end, which is nice for GerisNezus, because he can get another resource out of Clio, and he also gets the civil action back, and now can very nicely just go for Joan of Arc, finish the Silk Road, and I think has generally quite a solid position here, produces a lot of culture, has not the biggest economy yet, but at least thanks to the Silk Road through science, and with having Colossus, Himeji Castle, and Joan of Arc, he is at least quite safe and should not be the target of any aggressive stuff from me. Now H2 starts, and also GerisNezus of course immediately gets some Colossus draws. It's also good maybe for me that the territory was revealed before he got those draws, because he might have drawn some defense cards now. Majondor Seeds, one of the Confucius events, is revealed. He increases his population, upgrades another mine, another farm, takes the rich land and the frugality. Has at least 4 military actions, so with that is somewhat safe, but I at the moment don't have any aggressive cards in hand anyway. Eske seeds, a Confucius event is revealed, and unfortunately there's an early strategy that of course could be a big help for Eske to defend himself. He at this turn develops the Code of Laws, destroys a farm because he had an uprising issue, is also now vulnerable to the rebellion, same as Majondor, so that could also be now an impactful event for me. And then he, very crucially, upgrades that lab so that at the next turn he's just enough science to go for the strategy, and when I then have drawn any H2 cards, he can go for the strategy, and with that maybe has a decent chance of defending himself. Now it's my turn, and I decided to see the reds in there. I can do one more Barbarossa activation, then I'm at 0 food, of course. It will take a while, but I have knowledge about it, and maybe I don't necessarily need to go for food quickly, because I have already lots of units now, and maybe it would be better to go for something else. So I see the reds in there. And no rebellion, but actually the Dark Ages, and that event I was also very happy to see. Losing 2 science is still a bit bad for me. I'm low in science, so 2 science is quite valuable for me, but nonetheless, both GerisNezus and Majondor lose a lot more science than I do. And while Eske has some good science income, and you could argue that he can maybe be fine with losing 2, I think in this particular situation it's not the case, because out of the sudden he's missing the science to develop the strategy at the next turn, which could have a very big impact when I actually should maybe get an aggression now. And thanks to the warfare and the military action of it, I get now 3 draws, and those 3 draws could now be extremely important. But first of all, I of course had to think about what I do during this turn. There's an early copy of Scientific Method. There's also Newton in the game. I was considering to just take that now. The thing is, I don't even have enough resources to deploy it at the next turn. It would be quite slow, and I think there's just an even more important and strong card on the row, and that's the Ocean Liner Service. The cards that I can take are not the most exciting anyway. Of course, I could take the Revolutionary Deal maybe. That could be important to have some additional science, but on the long run, I think the Ocean Liner Service is so strong. I take that option away from my opponents, mainly Majondor, because GerisNezus couldn't have picked that Ocean Liner Service up. But Majondor, I think for him the Ocean Liner Service would be insanely strong. Of course, getting the Scientific Method is also strong for him, but especially with me pushing a bit of military, him getting soon an access to extra population is maybe especially bad for me. And of course, it's quite an expensive project, but it's just very, very strong, and I was hoping that I somehow will find a way to finish it. And now we are at the end of my turn, and of course I was very excited to see what cards I might actually draw. And I was very, very happy about that draw. I actually draw 2 aggressions, a blunder and a raid. I'm low in resources. Those could have an insane impact on for me. So I did get lucky here with my draws. Now, of course, we will have to see if maybe my opponents actually find a way to defend themselves, or if I will be able to deploy one of those aggressions at the next turn. GerisNezus seeds and opens the call to arms, making it that Eske and Majondor lose some civil actions. He will this turn go for the theology. And I was happy that he ceded, because what I was fearing was that maybe there could be a rebellion on top, and maybe he then doesn't push and fixes his happy faces. Maybe that could be a tell to Majondor and Eske, but now that he pushes, he is now fixing his happy faces, but it also gives him some additional strength, so it makes a lot of sense even out of the context of a rebellion. And he doesn't have knowledge now about the top event anyway, because he pushed. So he was hoping that now maybe Majondor could potentially still push, and maybe there's a chance that the rebellion is revealed, and it is actually revealed. So I do now get a bit lucky with the order of things, and both Majondor and Eske actually lost already some civil actions to the call to arms, and both of them actually have only 2 civil actions left now for their turn, which makes it, of course, first of all very important, very difficult to defend themselves, but generally, of course, just does a lot of damage. So was very happy that I kept it Rebellion earlier on instead of keeping 2 defense cards. Majondor just spends his whole turn grabbing the Scientific Method, and I feel like that's probably the correct choice for him. And he's at 8 strength, quite a bit behind, so I can definitely try an aggression against him, but with 4 military actions he at least has a chance to defend if he maybe gets lucky and has now already 3 defense cards in hand. Eske seeds, the barbarians are revealed. GerisNezus has the most culture, but isn't one of the 2 weakest, and Eske just takes the revolutionary deal, making it maybe more easily possible to go for the strategy, plus other stuff very soon, so he also just takes a card for 2. And he is even weaker, and more importantly, he has only 3 military actions. The Dark Ages had quite a bad effect for him, so that was quite unlucky now, getting hit by Rebellion, Call to Arms, Dark Ages, and thanks to the Dark Ages, or um, at least from my perspective, he can't go for the strategy. And with that, he is 13 strength behind me. He, even with 3 defense cards, could not defend because that would be plus 12, so it would only be able to defend a 19 strength attack. And with that, it was also clear which is the player to deploy an aggression against, because that aggression is just guaranteed. And also, I can deploy that raid, which does a lot more damage on Eske than on Majondor, and just also gives me even more resources than the Plunder would. And so the decision on my aggression was clear here. I just go for a raid against Eske, which is guaranteed to succeed, and losing those 2 alchemies is of course a very big setback for Eske here. And so I get that raid going. I even have now 10 resources, meaning I could just finish the ocean liner service, but I think there's an even better option for me. Takes my whole turn, but I am going for the coal here. I think fixing my resource income first is just a lot better than now spending all of my resources in the ocean liner and then afterwards being quite weak on resources again. I don't need the population that urgently, and I think it's just a lot stronger to go for the coal. Of course, I'm very low in science now, but I have the ability to invest into more coal upgrades, and I have the ability to invest into the ocean liner service, so it should be fine for the next 2 turns to just spend my resources in those 2 projects, and then in 3 turns already I'm back at 6 science and can maybe go for something like scientific method or maybe even journalism. And I also don't really need any science for my military at the moment. I have more than enough. I'm very threatening, so yeah, that just felt very good going into that coal, especially that early, and I was also quite happy and a bit lucky that that option was available for me. I draw 2 cards, and as you can see, I even get another raid, so I see if I can even go for another aggression at the next turn. Now it's GerisNezus' turn. He seeds, opens the Good Harvest. Not a great event for me. Those 2 food will now just be lying around, making it a bit more difficult for me to get out of corruption, especially with having the -1 blue token from the vast territory. GerisNezus takes the Conmon, takes the wave, takes the cultural heritage, upgrades this to get even stronger, and at the next turn he can develop the Conmon, and thanks to the cultural heritage, even with the Silk Road bonus, he can still be at a fine amount of science, even after developing that government form. Majondor this turn puts a lot of effort into being safe, but again, we can see here my strength push is also just doing some passive amount of things or damage to my opponents, because Majondor in a peaceful world could have just gone for 2 scientific method upgrades, could have switched to Newton, but now he isn't able to do this, and he is wanting to make himself safe, and knowing that Eske now can actually deploy the strategy and is now going for a lot of upgrades, but it delays his economical development of course by quite a lot. He is still picking up Newton though, which I think should be the correct choice. And maybe at the next turn he can then get a scientific method with Newton going. Now it's Eske's turn. He offers an international trade agreement to GerisNezus. He actually wants to produce additional food, but in such a military heavy game the food might be very important, so that's probably a good choice. He develops the strategy, rebuilds 1 lab to at least be back at 3 science income, then goes for the selective breeding, and ends his turn at 10 strength, and with having that many military actions now, 2 H2 defense cards would be enough to defend himself. The others are completely safe though, and I felt like it's still worth a try, especially because when the first aggression fails, at least the defense cards are gone, and maybe then again I can do a follow-up aggression. So I thought it's still worthwhile to go for an aggression, even though there's a bit of a risk that maybe Eske can defend mine aggression, and then GerisNezus and Majondor can actually profit from going for some aggressions of their own. But I was willing to take that risk because I just have a chance here to get another successful aggression going, and at least I have already drawn 3 H2 aggressions, so there are actually not that many left to my opponents, so I was willing to go for the aggression here. But because Eske has actually a chance to defend here, and because the raid is now not even giving me that many resources, also I have now already done some severe damage to Eske, I felt like it's a lot better to go for the blunder here, as that doesn't cost me any draws. As you can see, Eske is able to defend, so that aggression is not successful. And in this turn I can go for 1 mine upgrade. I could potentially spend more civil actions by just building steps of the ocean liner, but I think I actually then would have some corruption issues. The problem is, of course, now I do this upgrade and I now need to spend 4 civil actions and taking some cards. Luckily for me, I have very good cards to take in the 1 civil action area. First of all, the Rifleman, it's the second copy. Being able to upgrade his warriors at some point is insanely strong, so that's a must grab. Breakthrough with my low science is a must grab as well. Team Sports and Richland, both are maybe not must grabs, but still very strong grabs. I can use the Richland on coal upgrade, and the Team Sports, with that I have Happy Face Illusion and I'm prepared, so all of those cards are very strong for me, and normally when you're low in civil actions it's not that great if you're sometimes forced to spend a lot of actions to just take some cards, but in that case that's I think not the case. It's just quite strong that all of those cards available for me. That many strong cards being available has one downside. It's not really a downside because it's just strong getting all of those cards, but I otherwise maybe would have considered taking Maria Theresa with getting the Ocean Liner. I think soon being able to get the additional science from her, maybe being able to build up even more military could be quite strong, but I would need to miss out on 2 out of those 4 cards, and that I think would just be too expensive here. The question is now, of course, which leader am I aiming towards, and I think there are 2 main options here. Either I go for an even more military-heavy approach if I should get Napoleon and maybe the right cards, or with having the team spots now I can go for Anthony Gaudi, and I was actually liking that option because I felt like with having gotten the Ocean Liner service and the coal, I am in a strong position here. And if I now just maybe get Anthony Gaudi, team sports, and who knows, with the population from the Ocean Liner service at some point journalism, I'm just have a leader who produces me a lot of culture, and maybe without being too reliant on H3 draws, I can maybe turn this position into a strong one, which hopefully has some winning chances. So I thought Gaudi might be a very fine leader to get, and if I should get this copy of Opera, it's the second one. Of course, Bach could also be a very interesting option. I draw again 3 cards, so the additional military action from the warfare I think being quite crucial here. I don't draw another aggression or war, but 2 defense cards, so those could be interesting in case there's a colony revealed, and of course I also have knowledge that my opponents don't have access to them when defending. GerisNezus Seeds, the Crusades are revealed, a strength event that I have not put into the deck, so I was very happy to see that. GerisNezus goes for the Conmon, with playing the Cultural Heritage with the Silk Road bonus. He can also go for the Irrigation. That allows him to get out of Corruption and to be able to increase his population at the next turn. He then takes the Cavalryman and the Frugality. Majondor Seeds, and there's actually an historic territory revealed, and it was an interesting question whether I actually want to bid on this or not, because I, at the moment at least, don't need a Happy Face, and I also have the team spots already in hand. Nonetheless, this additional Happy Face might still be useful at some point. The problem is that I am losing a lot of my military pressure, because I've dropped from 20 to 15 strength, meaning that Eske doesn't have to be worried about getting hit by an aggression, and I'm not the strongest any longer in case there are more strength events coming. And so I was not certain if I even want to bid on this, but it's still giving me some culture, a Happy Face, which maybe allows me to delay going for the team sports. The science investment could be somewhat painful for me. And also I was thinking that if I stay 20 strength, Eske can just go for Napoleon and maybe make it that with him he is somewhat safe. And that's that. But there's one more thing that I needed to consider, because winning that colony is on one hand a chance, on the other hand also a bit of a risk, and that has to do with one of the H1 events that was still seeded by me, and that is those are the rats. If the rats are not revealed before my turn, then I actually very efficiently can use Barbarossa to now rebuild that unit, thanks to having gotten 1 yellow token back into the bank, and then out of the sudden do good harvest from earlier on. Maybe has turned out to be a very fine event for me anyway. But the rats could also be revealed before my turn, and then it's a bit more awkward to rebuild the unit, and doing this Barbarossa activation would mean that I delay the Ocean Liner service by yet another turn, but I get the population with Barbarossa very cheaply, and I was thinking that hopefully it should still be fine to delay it by another turn. But yeah, if I now if the rats are revealed before my turn, and maybe if I at the end decided it's more civil action efficient to just finish the Ocean Line instead of taking yet some more cards, Then I don't have the resource to rebuild, meaning I again stay weaker and don't have a lot of military pressure going on. So I was now hoping that the reds are not revealed before my turn. Eske is the weakest, he might not push, there are at least 2 events in there. And but if we are at my turn, I might not be able to use any politics phase, which is a bit painful. If you have such a strong strength position, you ideally want to use every politics action in a meaningful way, but in this case I might have to stop then. But this colony is giving me some benefits, and if I should be able to rebuild with Barbarossa, it basically costs me 2 food that I might have otherwise lost to the reds. Now I have a chance to spend them, and 1 resource. That's just such a cheap price to get another happy phase that I at the end decided I need to do this, even though there's a chance that sadly I might not be able to do a Barbarossa activation. Majondor goes for scientific method with Newton, copies to the fighting band tactic, but at the moment he is safe with his strength, also takes the navigation in hand, the urban growth and the efficient upgrade. Eske does turn seeds. I was first worried to see that, because the reds could now be revealed, but luckily instead it's the pestilence. I don't have a free population, so it's a bit painful, but then again I can lose the religion thanks to the happy phase from the historic territory. I'm still fine with the happy phases for now, and then I can just completely go into team sports, so I think losing this religion is not too bad, unless I get Antoni Gaudi, then it could be a bit annoying. Eske increases his population, upgrades another mine, takes the Republic, takes the patriotism and the cannon, so he doesn't go for Napoleon. A bit greedy, but on the other hand, there's Robespierre coming down the road, so he can maybe do a Robespierre revolution, still get one of those strong wonders, and then his position can get quite a big boost. But if he does that revolution, he also stays at 10 strength, and if I increase my strength again, he might also again be in a bit of a dangerous position. So it's a bit of a risk, but also has a potential high reward. Now it's my turn, and as I said, I need to skip this politics phase. I think the reds would just be very painful here, not getting another Barbarossa activation. And as you can see, I also decide to pick Napoleon here. If I go for the Barbarossa activation, I can't finish the ocean line. Of course, I could still build some steps to be civil action efficient, and I think I will also build some steps this turn, but I might also need to take some cards, and Napoleon I think is just a good card to get here. I have him available for 1 civil action. I know for certain that I get him. I get a civil action back. I can get his benefits immediately, and I felt like that's better than waiting for Antoni Gaudi, especially now that I lost the religion. I didn't want to lose anything else than the religion. The opera for Bach is gone. Robespierre is not really doing a lot for me, so I think Napoleon is the logical choice here, and his additional strength might also be very important here in order to allow myself to go for a raid at the next turn. And that raid could have quite some good effects for my own civilization, because, or we can maybe see that at the end of my turn. First of all, I will go for Napoleon. I get the warrior back by using Barbarossa. I will then switch to Napoleon, going up to 24 strength. I upgrade this mine with the rich land, being now at 9 resource income, which is quite strong. I take the journalism in hand. I will have a lot of population with the ocean liner, and I just felt like that's a great card for me to have. I thought if somehow I will be able to use that architecture and still go for journalism, but I just don't have enough science for that, so I skipped the architecture here, and instead I decided to build 2 steps of the ocean liner service already, and now at the next turn I have 10 resources, meaning after finishing the ocean liner service I have 5 left. If I, however, should get that raid going against Eske, very most likely, because if he indeed does that Robespierre revolution, he will be somewhat weak. If I should get that raid going, then I have, again, more resources, and then I could not only finish the ocean liner, but also immediately put the additional population to good use and build a journalism. So I felt like that building the journalism a turn earlier could really boost my economy a lot, and with that, Napoleon, with maybe increasing the chances of being able to deploy the raid, is actually already giving me quite some value here. And of course I also destroy something from Eske again, which is at that point not the most important factor, because he has already suffered through some damage, but on the other hand, if he gets unharmed through that Robespierre revolution and maybe picks up Railroad or Harvard College, out of the sudden he might still, despite getting hit by the raid earlier on, be in quite a strong position, so the damage is still also definitely a factor, but in this case the benefits that I get for my own were more important in order to set up for that raid. And I mean, I don't need to do a lot, I just Barbarossa activation I want to do anyway. Napoleon is maybe the best fit for me anyway, and now I have the chance to go for that raid, and I also draw even more cards, so maybe yet another aggression. No aggression, but the politics of strength maybe could be interesting. GerisNezus increases his population twice using the frugality with the Silk Road bonus, builds the third lab, which allows him to go for the coal at the next turn, takes Bach, elects Bach, just for the culture production at least at the moment, because both copies of Opera are gone, and then he gets still the culture income. The other one leaders are maybe not doing that much for him, and so he just goes for Bach now and gets the coal and the efficient upgrade. Also builds a warrior to have a bit more strength. Majondor goes for the bread and circuses, builds another rifleman, so with that he only needs one defense card to defend himself, takes the breakthrough and the reserves. And now it's Eske's turn. He first of all cancels the open borders agreement with Majondor, develops the cannons with Leonardo, then goes for Robespierre, switches to the Republic, plays the patriotism, has now military action again, increases his population, builds the cannon, gets a bit stronger, and then he can get out of corruption by another food upgrade, and takes the Harvard College, has now just enough resources to finish that at the next turn. So we can see he is still doing some great stuff here, and has now lots of civil actions. With the Harvard College, the science income is fixed, but he is still a bit weak militarily, and that I can punish now. I could also think about going on against the other opponents, but both of them only need one defense card to defend, and I just wanted to hit a target where it's the most likely that I will succeed. Eske could have another 2 defense cards, but with me having drawn 2 of my own, chances for that are not that high, and so I decided to deploy the raid. And that raid is indeed again successful, so Eske really getting hit by some bad stuff. Quite fortunate for me that I drew all of those aggressions. And yeah, Eske just has been maybe the most vulnerable player to those aggressions, and will now lose another lab and a religion, so again quite a big setback for him. But that allows me to now finish the ocean liner and build a journalism, which I think is insanely strong for me, and I have also civil action left. And here it was a choice between selective breeding and reserves. The selective breeding could at some point later on in the game come in handy to avoid famine, but for now my yellow bank is somewhat nice, and I will have also 2 food saved up, so it will take quite a while until the selective breeding will be useful, and it might still get useful, but I have such a nice yellow bank, maybe just building a 3rd farm could be fine to not have any famine issues. And with that, I rather went for the reserves, which I think is also important maybe as a bit of a small denial, because GerisNezus, with having the Silk Road and with being low in resource income, could really use those additional resources from the reserves, so I rather wanted to have that card for myself. I skipped the cannons, but for now I'm very fine with my strength. There's another copy coming down the row, and I could also have a chance to get rockets. And this turn I have drawn yet another aggressive card, the War over Technology, so I was interested to see whether I at the next turn maybe have a chance to declare that war. And the thing is, there might be a chance, because GerisNezus might now be, and I wouldn't blame him in this decision, but he might now go into a bit of a greedy play with going for that coal upgrade, which of course is quite strong for him, but now he is ending his turn with only 4 science, meaning he can't threaten to go into any military technology. He has Dimitri Castle, and at my turn we will see that it's actually it's not a clear decision whether I should declare the war, but I maybe have that opportunity, while if he just threatens a good tactic, I might not be able to declare that war. But getting that coal going is also just very strong, so as said, I don't think that's a wrong decision. I could also have no war available, otherwise I might have declared it already earlier, and he has Dimitri Castle at least. Now H3 starts. GerisNezus also gets some additional draws from the Colossus again. Majondor cedes, the Independence Declaration is revealed, but no colony is lost by GerisNezus. Majondor goes for the navigation, is now 20 strength, upgrades another lab, takes the cannons, the frugality, upgrades the mine, so has some very solid production. Not the most civil actions, but at least Newton to help out with that, and maybe also enough science to at some point go for an H3 government form. Eske cedes, the National Bride is revealed, even more culture gained for GerisNezus. Eske this turn finishes the Harvard College, takes the computers and the urban growth. Interesting that he takes the computers. Maybe Now that he lost all of his labs anyway, the multimedia could be an interesting alternative, but then again, in 2 turns, he is just at 8 science, not at 9, so he could maybe get the computers going earlier, and there are also some synergies for it in the game, so I guess that could be a fine choice, maybe also denial from one of the opponents. Now it's my turn, and I need to think about whether I want to declare this war. When I declare this war, could even go for some rifleman upgrades and make that wall really big. But then I would miss out on some draws, and I would maybe invest into the rifleman a bit earlier than I would like to. Maybe I could still do it, maybe I should still do it, but I felt like it's a bit more better when I just maybe build a team sport, something that I kind of need to do anyway. And we will also see that Pierre will be revealed, so another reason maybe to quickly get into some team sports. And then I'm at 26 strength. GerisNezus can't go for cavalryman or cannons, but what he can do, and it actually does give him a solid amount of strength, is to play the Wave of Nationalism for 4, or with the Silk Road 5 resources, and then he has 11 resources available, can upgrade a warrior to swordsman, and potentially destroy 2 things, go for another legion tactic, and potentially can even destroy a 3rd thing to go for yet another swordsman. That would put him at 20 strength, and if he then sacrifices a swordsman, he would then be at 25, or at, wait, he would be at, if he goes for that upgrade, and actually 3 more swordsmen, that's plus 7, that's plus 2 from the tactic, so that's 9, then he's at 22, not at 20, and then with sacrificing it's actually at 27, so he could win the war by 1. But he would need to destroy 3 things, and I just felt like that would still be a very fine outcome for me. I could, as said, also go for Rifleman, and then maybe I could still win the war, but still getting 3 draws, I felt is very important here, and I was hoping that even with only increasing my strength by 2 would do a lot of damage, and despite there being a risk of me losing a science, I was willing to declare that war. I then developed the team sports, built one, and I just take PR, because my military potential will now maybe fade a little bit because I don't have any tactic, and my opponents should now solidify their positions, and then it might just be good to soon switch to Pierre, get a bit of culture income, get to Olympic Games, and hopefully just overall a lot of value with going for some arenas. And so I was willing to pick him for 3, especially because otherwise Majondor might have a chance to take him, and he soon probably wants to build a 2nd arena and would get some very cheap culture income going. And I could also take reserves, I could take rockets. It's a bit risky to not take the rockets, but I was also hoping that at least one of those copies should make it through to me. And so I was willing to just take Pierre here. I end my turn, I get 3 draws, and those draws are indeed very valuable. I draw a War of a Culture, in case I don't lose the science, in case GerisNezus is not willing to go for such a big sacrifice. I might be able to declare the war, maybe go for Rifleman, and who knows, could maybe even be enough to go for an early war. But what I also was very happy to see is the impact of population. I have already a lot of population out thanks to the vast territory and all of those Barbarossa activations. And I also get a population every turn with the ocean liner, so that has the potential to be a very big impact for me. And so I was very happy that I made sure to get those draws instead of going for some rifleman upgrades. What I was not happy to see is that promise of military protection. It's of course also a danger that can, something that you need to have in mind when you declare an H2 war, that there is this promise of military protection where out of nowhere, out of the sudden, the opponent can get 4 additional strength, which is a bit annoying, because, yeah, it's just 4 of strength that you can't really account for. It's only 1 card. But it can just happen, and in this case it is actually quite a bit annoying for me, because as I told you already, it's already a war where I can potentially lose 1 science, and now with 4 additional strength you of course can imagine how much science I now am in danger of losing. Of course you could argue I should not take the risk of declaring this war, but if GerisNezus is actually letting me lose a lot of science, it will cost him heavily, and if he is just let in peace here, similar to maybe with Eske with the Robespierre Revolution, then he might just go for some more coal upgrades and solidify his position and end up just being in a strong position, because he is having the culture lead at the moment, is producing 7 per turn. We can maybe also quickly take a look at the overview. We can see as GerisNezus has the clear culture lead. I am second, but a bit behind GerisNezus, but I also have quite a lead before Majondor and Eske, so those are behind, need to catch up. But I also need to catch up towards GerisNezus. He has 7 civil actions, the Silk Road, if he just is let in peace. I do feel like his position could be quite strong, and so at least we will see. He will now defend very nicely, but it costs him a lot. He destroys the lab, destroys the mine, would now already win the war, but is actually willing to destroy yet another lab to go for even 2 more strength. It's a question if it's worthwhile, because that lab soon would have produced him 2 signs. But now he has so many swordsmen that he can sacrifice one while still fulfilling 2 legion tactics, which I guess also has something to it. And of course I lose more signs, and maybe I look like the most dangerous competitor for him at the moment. And yeah, that's of course painful now. If he sacrifices, and he certainly will do it, I lose 5 signs, so that definitely hurts. Especially against Majondor and Eske, but GerisNezus needed to destroy a lot, and it might still, maybe it is still a net gain against him, but it's really not certain, because he will gain 5 signs now, so I was really not happy to see this pack, but I also definitely understand Majondor that he accepts this, else maybe that gives him an opportunity to catch up to me and create a weakness on my side. Majondor, and of course he's getting some culture income going. Majondor sees the freedom of movement is revealed. He doesn't find any way to use it here. Goes for the civil service, I think a very important technology for him to not be stuck on 5 civil actions. Improves his position quite a lot, I would say. And then he takes the movies and plays the reserves for food, so that at the next turn he can increase his population. Eske seeds and opens the international negotiations. At least I'm still winning that strength event, as my turn is longer ago than GerisNezus' turn. Eske gives me some food, not the most useful for me. It's just lying around. Could maybe delay until the time until I have some famine issues. Or maybe give me the opportunity to play the reserves actually for food to get more population out, even though I should actually be fine with the population. Eske takes the rockets here, but the second one will be available for me, which I was happy to see. He then switches to Churchill, uses him to get the rockets going, goes for some upgrades. Is with that now a bit safer, and who knows, with Churchill maybe also has a chance to go for a bit of a strength push. Maybe he could then take the fundamentalism, but for now rather wants to have the urban growth available. Now it's my turn, and as you can see, unfortunately I do lose 5 science, and I'm now down at 1 science income, so that is actually quite a bit painful. And yeah, but at least with GerisNezus sacrificing, I mean even without him sacrificing, but I am the strongest at my turn, and I think it's good to push here. And I was now switching to Pierre, thought I really don't know if I will be the strongest when those H2 events will be revealed, and so I just decided to start seeding an impact, and the impact of population will be a very strong one for me, so I pushed that. Popularization of science is revealed, giving Majondor the most, but at least me the second most, even though those are only small benefits against Eske and GerisNezus. I used the freedom of movement to put a worker from philosophy into journalism. Eske moved a worker from warrior to cannons in order to get that fortifications tactic fulfilled. And I put a lab into journalism. I can build yet another journalism, which also gives me now science to get into rockets at the next turn, which could be nice, just starting to build some rockets. Worst case, I can copy this tactic at some point, but I also just start to threaten a lot of other tactics, especially an outdated modern army tactic, also, or of course also then soon a Napoleonic army tactic or some stuff. And so I think it's good to have the option to go for the rockets already next turn. I lost some science, so it's good to get some science back, and of course also the culture income is nice. I go for the rockets. I actually play the reserves for food, just mainly because I didn't know how to spend my remaining actions. There's of course a justice system, which could be nice to have, but the thing is, I have the Acropolis, which I don't have knowledge about Ravages of Time. So there's a chance that I might not be able to use the Acropolis before H3 government forms drops, but if I can use the Acropolis and maybe build 1 or 2 more team sports, or maybe even another journalism, which I can at the moment thanks to the Acropolis, then I could actually have the chance to get into something like democracy very cheap. and but I still might not be able to go for both the justice system and an H3 government form, and so I didn't really want to pick this justice system up. Multimedia could also be something to consider. Maybe I could even consider just taking the fundamentalism, which could allow me to maybe then still go into a direction where I can declare war at some point. So that could be interesting. Maybe I should have considered that more. At the end, I just decided to use my actions with playing the reserves for food, increasing my population normally, switching to Pierre, and building a third farm. And now I can be at 2 food for quite a bunch of more turns. And even if I then get at the next area of my yellow bank, I have 2 more turns that I can survive at -1 food. So I was hoping that just building that farm should be enough to make me safe from any famine issues for the rest of the game. And at the next turn I thought I can maybe start by building a rocket, because now I'm actually at +10 culture income. I have the Olympic Games. With that, if I count it already in, I'm at the end of my turn basically at 70 culture, so only 6 behind GerisNezus. I have a strong impact of population in there, and I overall felt like I have a solid or good position to win this game. And then it might be good to maybe just play it safe and start building some units from the next turn on. And maybe I should have then taken the fundamentalism, but I was kind of hoping to maybe get democracy, and I was rather thinking about just finishing this game in a peaceful manner. I still keep the war in hand though, and I do draw some more impacts. Again, I was happy about my draws. Impact of architecture should be quite good if I build some more arenas with Pierre. And the impact of culture also at the moment looks quite good, and I'm in last position, so I have all the control over that impact. So I was quite happy about my H3 draws so far. GerisNezus at his turn gets a copy of Air Forces, gets the multimedia, plays the reserves with the Silk Road bonus, and also takes the Engineering Genius. Majondor at his turn seeds and opens the wealthy territory. I have a bunch of defense cards, was willing to bid 1 unit, but it's not enough to win it. Majondor wins it by a rifleman, and then with the increased amount of resources that he has, can actually build a movie, get a bit of culture income going, takes the patriotism, the space flight, doesn't go for Marlene, but there's also Chaplin, and Chaplin at the moment gives him a lot more culture. Newton is still a fine leader to keep, so he decides to skip Marlene here. Then it's Eske's turn. He seeds and opens the historic territory. Again, I was willing to bid 1 unit in all of my cards. In this case, I was even somewhat fine with not winning it. Of course, at this point of the game, 11 culture is quite a lot, but it's also 2 less culture because of the impact of population that is coming, and I really don't need the happy faces at the moment. So I still would have been fine winning it, of course, for 1 unit, but I also was not too unhappy seeing that Eske wins it for 2 units, which brings him a bit close back in the culture again. He's not that far behind Majondor, but still is quite a gap to overcome, and generally, after getting hit by the second trade, of course, isn't quite in a challenging position. And yeah, he goes for that military build-up, can with that at least very cheaply rebuild, also gets the resource from Churchill, builds 2 rockets, increases his population, rebuilds a lab to at least have a somewhat solid amount of science available, and now it takes the fundamentalism, and with having those rockets, the fundamentalism, and Churchill, there's certainly the idea that at some point he could set himself up to get a war going. I'm at least one of the 2 strongest at my turn, and I decided to push the impact of architecture, which is the less swingy one than the impact of culture, and also I decided to not use the Olympic Games yet, rather keeping that in as an option when Eske maybe is set up to declare a big war potentially. Another colony is revealed, so lots of colonies are coming. Again, I was willing to bid 1 unit and my cards, and this time I'm actually able to win it. You could of course argue that that colony doesn't really do that much for me, because I have already that much population, but there's an impact of population coming that gives me basically +2 for that impact, and who knows, I have a bunch of resources, I might still be able to just use all of those population, so with winning that for 1 warrior, I think that's still quite nice for me. I then increase my population with the ocean liner, start building a rocket. I could also rebuild a warrior, but then I would miss out on a draw, which I don't like. And I also don't have knowledge about any strength events, so staying at 23 strength is hopefully safe. Also, if I should draw something like mechanized army, then I don't really need the warrior, and by using another military actions, my chances to draw a tactic are also a bit smaller. So I just build a rocket, just starting to use my free military action every turn, building up some strength with the Great Wall, and hopefully then being able to not be in danger of anything that Eske is able to build up as military threat. And at this point, first of all, the options in the row are not the most exciting for me. Not a single yellow card that gives me science or resources, only the endowment, but I might not be able to use the endowment for a lot of culture, which is of course generally a good sign, because then you are maybe in a good position, but I don't want to take it. And with that, the options what I can take from the row are maybe not the most exciting anyway, and then I decided to just play it safe, grab that copy of tanks, making it that I can threatening a lot of tactics. I'm prepared for a lot of tactics. At this point, I just thought I will try to now have enough strength, have enough good enough ability to build up a lot of military, and then I might have decent chances because of my good impacts. Even though GerisNezus of course still has a lead, if he maybe builds some multimedia, gets some culture income going without getting punished by anything, of course he is also still in quite a nice position. And then I have actually a civil action left, and as you can see, I built actually an additional bronze mine, because the only card that I could have taken would have been the oil. I just thought about floating the civil action, but the thing is, especially now that I won the inhabited territory, I have that much population available that I probably can build this mine without missing that population anywhere else. And of course it's very late in the game, but at the next turn, because of building that mine, I will be at -1 resources, but at the next turn there is no big military threat yet or anything. In 2 turns it's already even, and then in 3 turns, or if the game goes on for a bit longer, in 4 turns, I will have some additional resources produced, and I thought that might just be worthwhile here. And it could also help for some impacts, a bit for impact of industry, and one impact that could potentially be very big for me at the end is the impact of harmony. I might be able to actually put 7 in any of those areas, and then that could actually also help for that. But mainly I just thought at the next turn I hopefully won't miss that one missing resource, and then after that I'm already even. I was hoping that I have enough population, and I also just didn't have anything else to do with the civil action, so at the end I built a very late bronze mine here. I draw some cards. Impact of competition could be interesting if I go for more team sports and units. GerisNezus goes for the multimedia, builds one, takes Marlene, elects Marlene, maybe also to free up hand space, then takes the military theory. He doesn't have any movies, so maybe Marlene is mainly there to help him defending, and in such a situation where you are very heavily on infantry units, she can definitely help. If he has defensive army, he can maybe very quickly go for additional armies thanks to her. If he has classic army as well, so she might potentially be very helpful soon to help him defending, and of course he also sees that Eske maybe starts to build up for something here, and Eske also actually is getting some additional strength here from Majondor. Majondor takes the efficient upgrade, the endowment, and a professional sports. So just taking some cards. Maybe can go for chaplain at the next turn. Eske actually going for blunder against me. I can defend just using some cards. It was still a bit annoying. Needed to discard some impacts and stuff and my war, but I can keep still 2 good impacts in hand. But yeah, it was definitely worth a try for him, especially if he doesn't miss out on any draws. He goes for the air forces. Actually does miss out on a draw. Then is the question if it was really worthwhile for him. Yeah, I'm not sure. Of course, there's a chance that I might need to discard some good things. I might have a tactic in hand, and then I can maybe only keep 1 impact. So it definitely could have an effect here. But declaring an aggression where it's certain that it won't come through with missing out on a draw is a bit of a cost, but it could do some damage to me. So I guess that's fair. Now it's my turn, and I was not certain here if I should use the Olympic Games or not. Also, I was not certain whether I should push or not. Impact of culture and competition could both go in different directions. If maybe Eske declares war against someone else, out of the sudden those 2 opponents maybe have a big impact of competition, and culture could maybe still also go in. I don't know if I get a democracy yet. Majondor might get chaplain, and I thought maybe it's a bit safer to not see those impacts yet. I'm not sure if I should declare the Olympic Games yet, because the chance that I get punished by a war not that high, but Eske, for example, could get a patriotism with the Harvard College, go for 2 more rockets, declare war bit 52. He could even have a hybrid war, and he doesn't have enough science to go for air forces, but could then build another unit. Can maybe potentially somehow even build a professional sports, I guess not, but I guess maybe 2 cannons in a professional sports, but that's actually the same amount of strength, so it's not that threatening, but still, if he gets that opportunity, maybe could declare a small war against me, so I guess it's better to be safe, but then again, if he builds up one more time, maybe it gets even more risky, but then I can also threaten more tactics, so overall, yeah, I was unsure. I'm still unsure, but I decided to declare the Olympic Games now. I build a rocket, going up to 29 strength. I also build a warrior. Eske just declared an aggression against me. Now I make sure to again be able to defend, which I guess I not necessarily need because there are the Olympic Games ongoing, so I could maybe use that to not build a warrior, to not miss out on a draw, and to not unnecessarily commit myself more into that direction. So I'm not sure if I declare the Olympic Games, maybe I should not build this warrior. So maybe I did some small misplays here. Then I have some civil actions left, and I could take the fast food chains, but I have a bunch of impacts that I can really work towards the impact of architecture and competition, make it that every team sports provide me a lot of value. Impact of culture maybe requires me to build some more team sports, and also as said, I generally felt like I'm in a good position even without getting any wonder, and Eske might build up for some military, so just having more yellow cards in hand might just make me a bit quite a bit safer, and so instead of playing it greedily and taking the fast food chains, I actually leave the fast food chains available for GerisNezus, at least it's not the biggest one for him, and then I instead just take the reserves and the revolutionary idea. I was hoping to soon maybe get a government form, which is, as said, very cheap with the Acropolis. I draw another impact of variety, which might be a suitable one, and the international tourism. GerisNezus destroys a lab, builds a cavalryman, has actually the classic army tactic, so is now at 29 strength, and Marlene is now helping him to fulfill the tactic, takes the fast food chains and uses the engineering genius. Then it's Majondor's turn, and he reveals the iconoclasm. Bit unfortunate for him. I mean, it could have been revealed even earlier, then maybe it would have been even worse for him. But here, he still loses 2 civil actions. One because he develops the democracy now, and another one because he doesn't get the civil action back when going for chaplain. But he is now at 13 culture income, so that's not bad, and then takes the revolutionary idea, the engineering. If the iconoclasm wouldn't have been revealed, he could have also grabbed another reserve, so definitely a bit painful. But still, he is maybe also still a bit behind me in GerisNezus, but the spaceflight might be the biggest wonder that is built in this game, and he might also have some good impacts, especially impact of progress I was quite afraid of, because that's quite bad for me, so he is maybe slowly crawling his way back into the game. Eske seeds, the autonomous territory is revealed, so yet another colony, and this time I maybe did a really good attempt at just throwing the game away, because I maybe a little bit hastily on this one. I just felt like, it's a good colony that laid, let's just make it that maybe people don't win it for cheap, and also if I send 2 rockets away, or maybe a phalanx tactic, I should still be safe. Maybe that's also true, but there's the impact of population in there, so even if I take the 7 culture, if I send multiple units, that's just quite expensive. If I get the additional civil action, I can actually make it certain that the age will end. Even if Eske doesn't take any card, then those 4 yellow cards will be available for me, and thanks to the additional civil action, I would be able to end the age, so I could make sure to not get hit by the war, but that would also require my whole turn. And then maybe if my other opponents can do some better stuff, it could still end up being a bit awkward. So I bid that and then realized, I really don't want to bid 10 on this or send so many units away. And with that I was at the end very relieved that Eske at the end won it for 1 rocket. He doesn't take the culture, instead the resources, maybe indicating that he still has a plan on how he wants to use those resources to produce even more culture. He increases his population, takes 1 card from the row. I was interested to see, will he just take no cards, then he would force the age to continue, or will he just take a bunch and be fine with ending the age? And he takes this urban growth, but then, after building another cannon, interestingly, and a religion, he just takes the modern infantry and then passes. So he could have taken some more yellow cards, but that clearly shows that he would like to have another turn, and he also set himself up so that he could potentially declare war, build 2 air forces, and maybe with that get a war going. So he probably would like the game to continue, and I am now in a position where I need to think about whether I want to let it happen or not. First of all, I will start my turn by putting the impact of competition into the deck, which at this point I just felt like should very likely be a good impact, even when there is a war declared. There is the impact of progress, the impact that I was afraid of, but I was actually happy to see it because I kind of expected it to be in there, and Majondor at his next turn might have been able to develop yet another blue tech, so it's maybe better for me if it's out now than when it's would be revealed later. Even though I maybe at some point, hopefully, also might have the chance to get into an H3 government form. There are actually still no one democracy was now there, but still 2 government forms among the last 4 cards, which is a bit unfortunate. But I guess I also, for the most parts, didn't have enough science. But this turn it would have been quite nice getting into a democracy. And yeah, now I have to think about whether I want to end the age or not. And now that I didn't get the autonomous territory, but Eske took 1 card, it's similar like when I would have taken the autonomous territory and Eske wouldn't have taken any card. I basically need to get rid of 2 cards in my hand, for example, develop tanks, play reserves or revolutionary idea, and then I need to take just 3 cards. Not a really great turn for me. And yeah, I also, of course, would need to think about how well I could defend myself. Eske has a relatively clear limit for his strength. There's of course a patriotism. If someone lets this card through to him, then his limit might get a bit higher, so that's something to consider. But I have so many tactics that I can threaten that could just easily let me win the war, so that I felt like Eske would never declare war against me. And even if I have no tactic available, first of all, I could copy the classic army tactic, but that's not even the best I could do. The best I could do, and I will develop the Rifleman now, go for some upgrades, for 1 upgrade I think only, making it that I still draw 3 cards. The Warfare over the course of the game, doing really some big work. Because of that, I very often was able to draw 3 instead of only 2 cards, and my draws were very good, which is of course luck, but also I made sure to get a lot of draws. I take the air forces, the reserves, play the revolutionary idea, and now with those 2 reserves I have 21 resources at the next turn, and I could potentially play both reserves, develop the air forces, I get 1 population for free with the ocean liner, I could destroy 2 things, and then I could just build 2 air forces and a rocket, the rocket to get the additional bonus from the Great Wall, the air forces to get 2 more phalanx tactics, so I would get +6 from the tactic, plus 16 from the units, that's plus 22, and with that I'm already at 60 without having any tactic from H3 to work with, but I could also have something like Modern Army. I have with now playing the Revolutionary Idea 21 science, which is just enough to go for both air forces and tanks, so I can go for 1 upgrade to Rifleman, 1 upgrade to tank, build an air force, reveal the tactic, if just enough military actions to do that, and then I would win the war by quite a big amount. So I was thinking Eske would never go for a war against me. And Eske is quite a bit behind. Even if he gets a successful war going with 58 strength, that won't be the biggest one. And I just felt like it's good for me if he declares a war against either Majondor or GerisNezus. And even if those manage to find a way to defend themselves, at least that probably cost them to do a bit of awkward stuff. Especially Majondor will now lose the cannons before his turn. Is a copy of tanks there, but maybe GerisNezus could potentially even hate draft it to maybe make himself a bit safer and Majondor more vulnerable. That could be an interesting move. But if the tanks are available for Majondor, then he doesn't have the most military actions, so he might need to take them, build some already to then be able to maybe copy the tactic and maybe needs to destroy some stuff. So even if they at the end manage to find a way to defend themselves, I was hoping that at least they won't be able to just build more culture and prepare themselves better for impacts, and instead might need to do some awkward stuff. And if Eske at the end gets a war going, that's actually beneficial for me, so I think it's better for me to not end the age here. Actually reminds me a little bit of the situation of the last stage where all the drama at the end was about, because again I purposefully prolonged the game here, so to maybe give Eske the opportunity to war. In this case, of course, it would have been extremely costly for me to end the age, but yeah, the situation somehow remembered me. of that situation. At the end of my turn, I will get 3 more draws going. And my good draws do continue here. First of all, I get some tactics. With that, I'm now without a doubt completely safe. And I also get that Impact of Harmony, which is very strong for me. If I build just 1 more urban building, I have 7 in any area. And yeah, I was of course very happy about that impact. And with getting that impact, with already now having overtaken GerisNezus in culture, and with there some other good impacts already being in there, I was at this point very confident about my chances to win this game. Now it's GerisNezus' turn. He could deny the tanks here. Could be an interesting move, but I didn't look into it more closely. Impact of Architecture is revealed, which I seeded, which also ends up being the best for me. GerisNezus develops the cannons, actually switches into another tactic, the Mechanized Army tactic, takes the Revolutionary Idea, builds a step of the fast food chains, and then takes the Patriotism. Of course, that card is also extremely important for him, and taking that and the tanks maybe not really that easily possible for him, because now he can actually build an air force and still finish the wonder. However, building an air force, even when he sacrifices with the Magic Castle, is not enough to be safe. So Eske might have an opportunity to go for a war here, but whether GerisNezus will be the target maybe depends on how well Majondor prepares himself here. H4 starts. Majondor takes the tanks. Maybe at some point I will look a little bit into if a tank denial would have been possible here, or how much damage that would have been done to Majondor, because Majondor can now go for those tanks, copy the tactic, and then is actually missing a science to go for the military theory, but can go for 2 more tanks, which puts him at plus 18, that's 57. And then I guess he could build 1 more thing. I guess he could go for professional sports, 1 upgrade for free with the efficient upgrade, and then it's already more than 58, so he should be relatively safe. And with that, GerisNezus is the target of the war. Eske uses Churchill, with that can develop the air forces, builds an air force, destroys a mine, builds another air force, is at 58 strength. Sadly, he has a lot of civil actions left, meaning he can just take every single technology away from me, and sadly those 2 government forms, he has taken 3 out of the 4 H3 government forms, so sadly I missed out on them. I could have taken the fundamentalism, maybe I should have done that. Now sadly I can't make use out of that big Acropolis discount in H3. Now it's my turn. I have 2 good impacts in hand, Impact of Harmony and Culture. The impact that I seed now, there's a small chance that it could actually be revealed before my next turn. And I felt like then it's safer to seed the Impact of Harmony, because I will actually reach the maximum for that impact already this turn. And it could even be beneficial to maybe be able to disband this mine, for example, at the next turn. So I felt like it could even be good if that is revealed before my next turn. It's of course very unlikely, but the Impact of Culture maybe could be a bit bad if one of my opponents somehow gets a bit of additional culture, which might not happen because I have the tourism, so I don't have to be afraid about that. Majondor needs all of his resource for the space flight, so probably both those impacts are fine, but the harmony should be safer. So I seed that. Impact of population is revealed, plus 4 for GerisNezus, 10 for Majondor, 8 for Eske, 22 for me. So now the vast territory, the inhabited territory 2, and the ocean liner service are paying some tribute to me. I get yet another population now at this turn, and at this turn I just decided to first of all play the positional army, get some additional strength going, build another arena, and then I develop the tanks, the air forces. There might be actually I think I had knowledge about impact of tech from early on, but still I used the actions this way, and then I upgrade actually 2 knights to tanks, which cost me 1 resource more than warrior to rifleman, and does give me the same benefit for the impact of competition, but does give me 2 more strength, and with that I can defend against an aggression from Eske. I thought it's extremely unlikely that he would go against me anyway, because there might just be better targets, but who knows? Maybe the aggression that he went for earlier when I defended only with normal cards. Maybe that was a small tell that I could have no defense cards. Who knows? He maybe could do it. And as I generally felt very good about my position, especially now that GerisNezus, the player with the 2nd most cultures, getting hit by a war, I was not willing to take any risks here. Getting hit by an aggression would actually still be bad because I would lose a good impact, but Eske, I think, would not go for an aggression now against me if he has other targets when I can just defend for certain. Now it's GerisNezus' turns. Let's see how he defends against this war. He first placed the revolutionary idea. Thanks to the Silk Road bonus, can develop the air forces, place the patriotism with the engineering genius, can finish the fast food chains for 16 points. Not the biggest fast food chains, but still 16 points or 16 points. And then he disbanded some swordsmen in order to build his air force. Could have also disbanded some coal mines and keep the swordsmen for maybe a bit of additional strength, but maybe that would make him vulnerable for a bunch of impacts, industry, and also the impact of harmony that I put into the deck, so probably at the end a good choice. Majondor develops the professional sports, plays the endowment for 4 culture, upgrades the professional sports, finishes the space flight for 24 culture. Eske steals 14 culture from GerisNezus, is still quite a bit behind him. GerisNezus being able to sacrifice. Eske then opens the impact of industry, so maybe it already has paid off GerisNezus to not destroy any mines here. Impact of industry actually being best for me, so that little bronze mine also contributing here. Eske upgrades some units, disbands also a unit, builds a lab, which is interesting. I thought that the intention is probably to make his impact of science safe, which I imagine that he maybe put into the deck, because now even if I build another journalism, I can't overtake him. I can still overtake him by also building another lab, but then it gets somewhat costly for me, so he thought maybe I won't do that. And I also will indeed not do that, because I can really score a lot of points with preparing for the impact of competition here, and also I have the biggest culture income, so I just at this turn seeded the impact of culture into the deck. Impact of science is now actually already out, which gives me at least still the second most culture. And then I can build one more arena, that gives me 2 culture income and also 2 points for the impact of competition. I play the reserves, upgrade 1 warrior to rifleman, and then disband the other warrior to build an air force, making me also the strongest. There were some other variations, but at the end they basically all kind of gave me the same amount of culture, and so I just went with that line at the end, and then ended my turn with exactly 200 culture, having quite a bit of a lead, having more good impacts in there, so I thought that will definitely end in a win for me. Majondor has an 18 points lead before GerisNezus, so maybe GerisNezus could catch up, but his impacts are probably rather weak, so it could also be interesting to see if maybe Eske can actually close the gap, but the gaps are relatively big, so let's see if there is any change in the final impacts. The first impact is the impact of culture seeded by me. That gives Majondor plus 10, GerisNezus plus 5, Eske plus 0, so all the gaps are now getting even bigger. Then we have the impact of happiness, plus 16 for me, plus 16 for Majondor, only plus 8 for GerisNezus, plus 16 for Eske, so Eske is catching up a bit now. We have the impact of government. It's actually a very bad one for me, and it's actually very rare that I end a 4-player game with so many civil and military actions, so quite a bad impact for me, but yeah, this game it actually worked out quite well, staying just in 5 civil actions. I guess the ocean liner service basically also provides me additional civil action, and Barbarossa of course saved me a lot of civil actions. With that maybe it was fine. Impact of government being the best for Eske, who also catches another 7 points up to GerisNezus. Then there's an impact of strength, maybe seeded by Eske, who gets plus 10 now against GerisNezus, and out of the sudden he is definitely in striking distance, just needs 6 more culture to overtake him. And then there's one of my impacts, impact of competition, being very big for me, plus 19 for Majondor, and really bad for GerisNezus, so Eske, with that impact, is able to overtake GerisNezus, but there's one unknown impact left. Or actually, it's not an unknown impact, if you paid attention. It's the impact of harmony, giving me plus 28, Majondor plus 16, Eske plus 16, and GerisNezus plus 12. And with that, Eske has actually made the comeback and finished at the 3rd position. So with that war and with having some really good impacts, he managed to close that relatively big gap and finish at the 3rd position. I, at the end, am able to win this game. And of course I'm very happy about it, while Majondor finished 2nd. Yeah, that was quite an interesting game. I think that choice to Cede Vast Territory was quite influential, first of all because I then won in Vast Territory, but also because then I gave myself the chance for something like Development of Settlement or Development of Civil Life being revealed, which then made going for the Great Wall possible or maybe more worthwhile. And I think that Great Wall has certainly shown what it can do and what the potential that it has. I think in 4-player games, the Great Wall is just quite a strong wonder. And especially, of course, together with Barbarossa, we also have seen how strong Barbarossa and the Vast Territory is. So it's, of course, always a bit of a gamble if you seed that a colony into the deck, but sometimes I think it's just a right thing to do. But of course, I also got lucky in quite a bit of regards. I went for that strength push, and at the beginning of age 2 immediately draw 2 aggressions. The Dark Ages made it that Eske couldn't defend himself. I mean, maybe he couldn't have even defended himself otherwise, we don't know it. But then I could get that raid going, and later on I could get another raid going, which of course was somewhat... Eske could have gone for Napoleon, maybe played a bit differently, but Robespierre, of course, provided a lot of value. Maybe he thought he needs to take some risk in order to come back, but then got hit by another raid. I got this ocean liner service and early coal. With that, had some good things to invest into. And with all of the additional resources out of the 2 raids, I could also build those things very quickly, get a journalism going more quickly. And yeah, then I ended up with having quite a strong position. So a successful strength push, some good draws, and at the end, I am, of course, very happy to win this game. And yeah, and with that game finished, we can also take a look at the current standings. And there is actually also the one 3-player game finished where I wasn't involved. So let's see how the situation in the standings looks now. And as you can see, Majondor managed to win this game before Eske and GerisNezus. And I managed, of course, to win the 4-player game that we just saw, and with that we have the following situation in the standings. I, with yet another win, have a great position now. Half of my games have finished. I have 19 points. I'm 8 points ahead of Eske, but Eske has also 1 less game finished. And I'm 9 points before Majondor. Majondor maybe at this point with the biggest chances to make a comeback, especially if he manages to maybe finish before me in the 3-player game, or may ideally win it while I lose it. He could come he would be in a position where he's 4 points behind me going into the 2-player game, so that is still completely in the and then he would be in a position where he can definitely make a comeback in the 2-player games, but getting a good result out of the 3-player game now extremely important for him. And GerisNezus, with being now at 1 point after 4 games finished, is probably out. I didn't count it, but yeah, I think for him, and there are probably no chances left to win the group. So yeah, he will then probably be eliminated. Went for some greedy civilizations with a lot of culture income, and got punished for it. Could have maybe still could have also gone maybe the other way with some other draws from the opponents or some other stuff happening. But I think in 3 and 4-player games, especially in 4-player game, going for such more culture-intensive strategies can just backfire very easily, especially at a high level. So that didn't work out for him, but he still made a good try, and maybe he will still be able to score some points in the remaining games. So yeah, I hope you're excited to then in the next video take a look at the last 3-player game, which is still ongoing. There I could make a very big step towards winning the group, or Majondor could try to make the start of a comeback. I hope you're excited for that, and then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.